Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today we are officially kicking off Series 12 in VGC. This is the format that we'll be playing for the next couple of months, and once in real life tournaments return, it is what the actual circuit will use as well. So yeah, we are finally getting started with this format. We've known about it for a couple of weeks now, and it is time to dive in. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team that'll be featuring in today's episode, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps linked in the description below. To get Series 12 started, I wanted to feature a team that I saw online and I think is really smart, really well constructed, and matches up very well against a lot of the common meta teams that I expect to run into early on in Series 12. So this was initially built by two players, NJ11 and North. We've actually featured a couple of North's teams on the channel throughout the last year and a half or so. And so I've linked their Twitters down in the description below. And there's actually a really good in-depth team report on Adi's YouTube channel as well. Adi is just a really good content creator, creating just very, very in-depth, high-level VGC content. And so I've linked all of that in the description below. Adi interviews NJ11, the original creator of this team, and they do a kind of deep dive on everything about the team. So if you really want to get the best insight possible, check out all of those links that I mentioned in the description below, as well as a rental and a paste courtesy of NJ11. So yeah, huge thank you to the original creators for the team and to Adi for doing a great breakdown of this team. And yeah, I'm really excited to try it out. One of the reasons I wanted to feature it is because I think that Series 12 really is just going to be dominated by Zacian, especially on day one. I think that as the format develops and as the metagame kind of grows, players might realize you don't necessarily need Zacian on every team. But I think early on, I just see Zacian in the majority of teams, at least 50%, if not 80% of teams. And I think this team just gives you a really favorable Zacian matchup because you have so many ways to actually just get a one-hit KO onto it. It's actually pretty tough for Zacian to get going here because, a lot of Pokemon resist Zacian's attacks. You can one-shot it with Max Flare from Charizard, or G-Max Wildfire, I should say. Max Quick from Groudon. Instin's obviously good against Zacian. Gastron's good against it as well. And you've also got Will-O-Wisp on the Calyrex Shadow Rider. I think that a lot of Calyrexes you'll see in Series 12, at least in the early format, are going to be a set like this because it is a Pokemon that is actually a little bit stronger as a non-Dynamax option. And when you throw a Life Orb on Calyrex, for example, you really leave yourself vulnerable to getting one-shot by surprise 4-time super effective attacks, right? And so Will-O-Wisp, I think, really smart tech. It's one that we didn't see too much of in some of the previous restricted formats because with Calyrex in those formats, you only get one restricted Pokemon, and so having another offensive option or sometimes Trick Room, which we would see, would often be a little bit stronger. But I think Will-O-Wisp makes a ton of sense on this team and just makes it even harder for Zacian to get going. So the general idea here is that you have a lot of offense. Your best max options by far are going to be Charizard and Groudon. Both of those are really good, but in flex scenarios, you really could max everything else, right? Calyrex can be a good max option, but it is often, I think, better as a non-max option just because Astral Barrage hits both of your opponent's Pokemon, and as soon as you max Calyrex, you of course can't hit both. And so the general idea is to get massive amounts of damage off with Charizard and Groudon. Instant and Thundurus, really, really good support. Support Thundurus, I think, is going to be even stronger in Series 12. Matches up really well against a lot of the restricteds that you're going to run into. And, Eerie Impulse shuts down those special attackers, and Thunder Wave is always really valuable into all of those physical attackers, like Zacian, for example, that you may run into. You've got the safety goggles here as well, so it just gives you an even more favorable matchup against Pokemon like Amoonguss and Venusaur. You've got leftovers Gastrodon here as well. Storm Drain is obviously really valuable. Kyogre is by far one of the most popular picks in Series 12. Like Zacian and Kyogre are just, really, really common too. In fact, you're often going to see that as a duel as well. So Gastrodon covers the Kyogre weakness a little bit because, otherwise you actually don't have any water resistances or immunities on this team. And it just makes it a lot harder for Kyogre to just come out and spam Water Spout immediately on turn 1 of the game, right? Young Gastrodon is a Pokemon that can apply a lot of pressure as well and slow down your opponent, forcing them to switch out. That can give you a big advantage. And so, yeah, it's been a while, actually, I feel like, since we've used Charizard, so I'm kind of excited to return to it. None of the sets here are, unorthodox by any means, but I think there's a lot of smart team building here, whether it be the Will-O-Wisp on Charizard, or on Calyrex, the max overgrowth here on Charizard, as well as the Blast Burn Hurricane, just maximizing your damage output. I think Solar Beam is really important here because max overgrowth allows you to hit Kyogre for a lot more damage, and you're going to run into a lot of Kyogres while you use this team. So overall, yeah, I think this team just matches up very, very nicely against a lot of common teams in the metagame, and like I mentioned, against Zacian. So I'm excited to dive into this format finally with all of you. So thank you so much as always for watching. Thank you to the original creators of the team, NJ11 as well as North, and thank you to Adi for posting a really in-depth video with NJ11 about this team. So once again, check them all linked in the description below. Leave a like if you enjoy, and question of the day, I want to know what you're currently trying out in Series 12 and what you're enjoying. Obviously the format just started, but let me know in the comment section below, and let's get started. Alright, our very first match of Series 12, and it's going to be Blastoise, Calyrex, Rillaboom, Thundurus, Landorus, and Zacian. So they do indeed have Zacian. That is the restricted I expect to run into the most while, yeah, just playing Series 12, especially early Series 12. They have a lot of Dynamax threats here. Blastoise, Calyrex, potentially Thundurus and Landers, although I think the Thundurus on their team is more likely to be a support-oriented one. Charizard is interesting from our end. Does really good damage, but has to worry about Thundurus, a little bit about the Landorus as well. I think Gastrodon is probably the one we don't really bring into this matchup because they have Rillaboom. I'm a little bit intrigued by Thundurus from our team because I can Eerie Impulse as well as Thunder Wave. But I honestly think I like Calyrex, Groudon, Charizard, and Incineroar. So then just trying to figure out what order I want to go in. I don't want to lead Incin in the off chance they actually are Defiant Thundurus. I want to be a little bit careful about that. I don't mind Calyrex and Charizard as a lead, I think, with Groudon and Incineroar in the back. The idea here is that I can flex turn 1 by switching Calyrex out into Charizard, for example, or into Groudon. That would set up the Sun immediately. Or I could switch out the Charizard into Incineroar, get an Intimidate off, and Calyrex here can be really valuable thanks to Will-O-Wisp, and a lot of my opponent's attackers are physical Pokemon. So I'm wondering if they actually bring the Blastoise because I have Gastrodon in Team Preview. And they're going to go with Thundurus and Rillaboom. Okay. If you're leading this, it makes me think Thundurus indeed is offensive then. So turn 1, I'm thinking just going, thinking about just going for a Will-O-Wisp onto the Thundurus. I mean, given this lead, they should have Calyrex plus Zacian in the back, right? If that's the case, you can't Dynamax Zacian. Rillaboom's not a great max option. So, I don't know. I feel like the odds of it being offensive Thundurus here are actually decently strong. I don't mind going straight for a Will-O-Wisp here onto the Thundurus. And the question here is, do I want to commit an attack with the Charizard immediately? Because I think it could be worthwhile to just protect here, but I could see my opponent like doubling up here. I could see them going for a Max Airstream onto Charizard. Maybe they are defensive and they just go for a Thunder Wave or Eerie Impulse onto Charizard. Okay, honestly, I'm going to Will-O-Wisp and protect turn 1. Because even in the worst case, which is them doubling up, okay, and they don't Dynamax Thundurus, so maybe it is just support Thundurus, which is what I initially thought it would be the case. And they go for Rain Dance. Okay, very cool. So the Will-O-Wisp here, kind of useless, but it also just helps me figure out my opponent's Thundurus set a little bit better, so that's good knowledge at least. However, all things considered, this is a pretty strong turn from their end, and I actually end up missing Will-O-Wisp as well, unfortunately, but that's okay. It's good to know that they're Rain Dance. That's very important information. I am going to protect the Calyrex here, and we actually have Hurricane, so I can just take advantage of the fact that they just set up the Rain and go for Life Orb Hurricane onto Rillaboom. I could see a T-Wave or Eerie Impulse or Thunderbolt coming out from Thundurus right now. Obviously not an amazing start to the game, but that's okay. And it is indeed the support Thundurus that I was talking about. Okay. So this means that I can switch into Incineroar relatively easily next turn at least, right? And get an Intimidate off onto Rillaboom. Hurricane's not going to get the knockout here, obviously, but this is exactly why I didn't want to Dynamax on turn 1 of the game, right? And that's actually so much damage still, wow. Even with the Eerie Impulse. The reason why it's not worthwhile Dynamaxing there immediately is because if I get hit by a Thunder Wave or Eerie Impulse, it puts us in a really tough position. So I don't mind switching out into Incineroar right now. I actually think it could be worthwhile to just protect the Charizard right now because this allows me to Fake Out next turn and prevent Charizard from getting hit by a Eerie Impulse or a Thunder Wave right now. So I don't mind going for that. So far on Thundurus' moveset, we've seen Rain Dance, we've seen Eerie Impulse, Thunder Wave, Taunt, Thunderbolt are all attacks that you often see. The key thing right now is that my opponent doesn't have super good offense, but they've broken the Focus Sash on my Calyrex, which obviously is not super good for us. So I'm going to protect the Charizard here. Okay, they're just going to go for Glide, and looks like probably what's going to be a Thunderbolt from the Thundurus. Yep. Okay, that works for me. Rain in this game on their end isn't really that scary in my opinion, because it's not like you have like a Kyogre, for example. Because in my head, I think I want to angle towards Dynamaxing the Groudon in this matchup. The only interesting thing here is, like, I almost want to switch out. But what I can do here is just fake out into Thunderous and go for a Hurricane. So if you're my opponent, you can obviously read into that. I think Rillaboom's in a really awkward spot. So I could see Rillaboom actually pivoting out right now into, say, Zacian. Or Calyrex. Or I could see them reading into me switching Charizard out right now and then just going for Grassy Glide onto the Charizard slot. I think that's another possibility right now. I think I'm probably going to Dynamax Groudon in this game. And I'm actually going to attack around the Thundurus, essentially. So I don't mind just going for Fake Out on a Thundurus here and a Hurricane on Rillaboom this turn, I think. They are going to switch Rillaboom out, though. Okay. Oh, and interesting. They have Landorus. So they actually did not bring one of their restricted Pokemon, which I have to say I wasn't fully anticipating. I guess what's scary this next turn is Landorus pressuring with a potential Swords Dance now, but... Wow. That is an interesting decision. Despite them being Eerie Impulse and Rain Dance Thundurus, they actually Dynamax it. So I wonder if they actually have Fly on it to, like, go for a Max Airstream. That is not a play I saw coming at all. And yeah, they are slower, no surprise because they're more support-oriented. Pretty good Hurricane damage on a Landorus, and we get the Confusion, so honestly I think that's a great turn for us. Are they just going for Max Lightning? Wow. I honestly don't mind that, because if you're support Thundurus, like, now this paves the way for my Groudon in this match, right? It was smart of them to conserve Rillaboom, because now you have something that can still potentially handle my Calyrex in the late game. I could just go into Calyrex here and go straight for an Astral Barrage. I don't think that's, like, a terrible play. I just don't know if it KOs the Landorus from this range. Alright, so the alternative is to just go out into Groudon. I can't Fake Out with Incineroar. They can Max Lightning into Earthquake, which is a little bit scary. My opponent's last Pokemon should be the Zacian. But I don't think their Thundurus can really do too much to Groudon here, truthfully. I'm going to Calyrex here instead. It's really close here. I mean, I guess I could also be Scarf Landorus in this position, but that would kind of surprise me. Life Orb Hurricane at -7. I mean, that's not Assault Vest Landorus. And they're confused, so they're in a really weird spot right now. So what I can do is go for a Parting Shot here onto the... I guess I could see Landorus switching out into Zacian. I'm going to target Thundurus. Well, Thundurus' damage output's actually really insignificant here in my opinion, so... I guess the one thing here is that Landorus may protect, but Parting... Actually, because Landorus may protect, yeah, I think it's better to Parting Shot into Thundurus, because I don't think Thundurus is max guarding here. Astral Barrage damage on Thundurus is significant here, because it could put it in max Rockfall KO range. Okay, so we will just get the Astral Barrage off, and that gets the knockout onto Landorus. Okay, perfect. The reason I was hesitant about bringing Groudon out immediately is because I was nervous about Incin or Calyrex getting KO'd and then forcing, like, giving my opponent just a huge numbers advantage, right? Like, now the reality is, yeah, they'll get the KO onto Calyrex, but I'll bring Thundurus down. Unless this is actually... No, it can't be Physical Defiance. Yeah, we would have seen the Defiant activate already once Incineroar came out. So this is just really interesting. Yeah, like that Dynamax was solely to block my Fake Out, right? And to get the knockout on a Charizard. But the reason I was like hesitant about Dynamaxing Charizard this whole time was because it has a good matchup against like the rest of my opponent's team, but not so much the Thundurus. I can definitely see where my opponent's coming from, where they're probably thinking, well, I should take care of Charizard because otherwise it threatens Rillaboom, it threatens, especially because they didn't bring Calyrex, like Charizard can essentially one-shot all of their Pokemon, right? And so that play made a lot of sense, especially if you're trying to just prioritize knocking out the biggest threat. So the upside for me right now is that I have a late game Dynamax to play towards. Now the downside is that they'll probably have Zacian in the back, right? And with Zacian, the really scary thing is that obviously you just do so much damage with your Behemoth Blade if I Dynamax the Groudon. So right now, I think you always bring out Rillaboom, because if you bring out Zacian, you just get intimidated immediately, meaning that I can just Fake Out the Zacian and then get an attack off with the Groudon. So, yeah. I'd be very happy to see Zacian come out here, because I think it essentially forces Zacian to switch out. I guess there's a chance they didn't bring Zacian and brought Calyrex as their last one as well. I didn't even mention that as a possibility. But, yep, it is going to be Rillaboom here. So you could fake out into the Incineroar. Another thing to think about in this game is actually Dynamaxing the Incineroar because I resist Behemoth Blade. And with the Sun Up, I can actually just max flare everything. Although Thunderous Dynamax is obviously going to end soon. If I were my opponent, what would I do here? I'd consider just going for fake out onto Incineroar. If you don't fake out Incin, obviously I get a fake out off into Rillaboom. I don't really need a Swords Dance, I don't think. Fake out into Incin and Max Lightning is what I'm nervous about here. I'm honestly intrigued by the idea of Dynamaxing Incineroar here. This may be slightly risky, but I actually think Max Incin gives me a better shot in this endgame because it matches up better against both of my opponent's restricted Pokemon, wildly enough. Now, there's the problem here is that Thundurus very likely has a berry, right? So I don't even know if Rock Slide into Max Flare is going to get the KO. But yeah, I think in this game, both of us ended up Dynamaxing Pokemon that are relatively surprising. I could have protected Groudon here, I suppose, and just went for a Flare Blitz. Oh, they actually Max Guard Thundurus, okay. It's just a double protect. I actually could have gotten the KO onto Rillaboom there potentially then, but that's fine. The interesting thing here is now obviously my opponent can change the weather with the Rain Dance, but I honestly don't mind that too much. Flare actually probably would have just knocked out Rillaboom through Protect there, so that's something I could have considered. But I didn't think Thundurus would actually Max Guard. But I think that's a smart Max Guard because now you get to stall out a turn of my Dynamax, see who Dynamaxes, and now angle for, yeah, going for like a Rain Dance, for example. So you're probably just going to Grassy Glide the Groudon, right? I don't mind going for a Protect and a Max Flare in this position, I think. I think the key thing to note is that from my opponent's perspective, I'd be very surprised if Thundurus actually has Protect. Meaning if you don't have Protect, I can always double up onto that slot next turn. Yep, so there's Rain Dance, but that's fine. Like, it obviously reduces my damage output. That was a really interesting play last turn, though. I like that a lot from my opponent's end, because I think if they just went for Fake and I get a knockout there, we're in super, super good shape. They do have Wood Hammer, so glad that I ended up protecting there. I don't think it would have KO'd, but potentially puts me in Behemoth Blade KO range, and that's the problem. And Flare gets the knockout onto Rillaboom. So, we have one more turn of Dynamax. I'm still at full HP with my Incineroar. And Groudon. The key thing to note is that Incin here does not have a Recovery Berry, and so that can be a little bit scary. I think my angle here this next turn is to... I mean, Zacian protecting here is the obvious play, but... Oh, wow. They didn't bring Zacian. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So the question here is, does Calyrex protect? The thing is that Calyrex's damage output is pretty subpar into Incineroar anyway, so I'm leaning towards just a Max Rockfall and a Max Flare here into the Thundurus slot. Try to get the knockout onto Thundurus. Rock Slide breaks a Focus Sash on Calyrex anyway, and I think Calyrex Max Guarding here certainly makes a lot of sense. They actually go for Thunder Wave, but yeah, we're Dark type, so that doesn't work. And Groudon actually takes less than 50%, which is such a big deal. I think that should ensure us the victory at this point, especially since they didn't go for a Rain Dance. Even if you're Citrus on Thundurus, they do end up surviving. But even if you're Citrus, yeah, Flare will get the KO. And that was a crit anyway, so I'm glad we didn't just outright win the game. Since, yeah, the expected outcome there is to not get a crit, and then Thundurus would just be in KO range from a Flare anyway. So they kind of wasted an attack on Thundurus there. They actually had the opportunity to go for a Rain Dance, so that was obviously would have decreased my damage output a little bit. But now it's a 2v1, and this is one of the reasons why I chose this team initially, right? It has so much good anti-Zacian, like you can see my opponent just didn't feel comfortable bringing it at all. And to force your opponent to not bring one of their restricted Pokemon often is very good news for you. So that's going to be it for Dynamax here. Now it is 1v1. I am fine just going for Protect in this position and a Flare Blitz. How many turns of Grassy Terrain are left? Yeah, we get another turn of Grassy Terrain recovery, so just ensuring that I survive an Astral Barrage. And Calyrex here really just doesn't have too much to hit the Incineroar, especially considering that they're not a Life Orb set either. So I don't have to really worry about its damage output. So this was an interesting one. I felt like I was off to kind of a weird start with just Charizard, you know, not really able to pressure as much as I would have liked it to. But had I Dynamax Charizard, you know, we just get hit by like an early Thunder Wave or Eerie Impulse, this game actually could have just been really awkward for us, right? Because it's like if I can't pick up too many knockouts with my Dynamax, and I don't have a strong late game Dynamax to play towards, things can get really scary. But yeah, maxing Instant here I know seems kind of weird, but the reason I wanted to go for it was because I thought it matched up better against either Calyrex or Zacian in the back, right? And they actually indeed did end up having Calyrex, but I was more expecting Zacian, and either way, like Max Instant I feel like actually does better against both of those rather than the Max Groudon in that position. So Calm Berry on the Blastoise, Focus Sash on the Calyrex, so Sim set here, Miracle Seed, yep. Yeah, the Dynamax Thundurus was just such an interesting decision, but it makes sense if you're, you know, just trying to hard shut down the Charizard as quickly as possible, since Charizard otherwise really has an amazing time in this matchup. So yeah, that was a fun and long first game, so let's just keep things going. Alright, our second game here, and it's going to be Palkia Zacian. Comfey, which almost ensures weakness policy on Palkia. So I think one thing that's going to be really interesting in this format is deducing whether it support our offensive Thundurus. And on this team, it's actually like if you don't have offensive Thundurus and Palkia, then Palkia literally becomes the only Dynamax option, which is interesting. But I could definitely see it being support Thundurus here because with Rain Dance, it's really powerful. So Palkia's pretty scary here, honestly. Now I've got Eerie Impulse on Thundurus, so I think that's valuable. But they've got Indeedee as well. Gastrodon is Yawn though, right? And Storm Drain, which obviously covers for Palkia's water type attacks, but I think my opponent's probably going to try to play around the Gastrodon by just going for Max Wormwind instead. That's pretty reliable damage for them. Palkia Indeedee potentially, I think, is a really threatening lead here. Yeah, that is pretty scary. I think I want to like damage away at the Palkia and then finish it off with a max move ideally. So I'm thinking Thundurus, Calyrex, Groudon, and Charizard in this one. I don't love Incineroar, even though it's obviously super good into Zacian, but once again, I'm hoping that like what I saw from that last game is that our opponents might be even a little bit hesitant to bring Zacian outright. It's such a strong Pokemon, but Zacian can actually like put you in really weird positions if you're going up against this team specifically, because like it almost there's so many Pokemon you don't want to go up against, and resulting you into like feeling forced to switch out often. So they're gonna go with Palkia and Indeedee. Okay, that's not super surprising as a lead, and honestly not great to see here, especially because they can potentially threaten Trick Room as well. I think this is a really consistent lead for them. I don't think I had too many good answers for this, actually. My best bet maybe would have been leading Groudon, but I do think that Palkia here is just not a very easy matchup for us. Turn 1 for my opponent's end, what do I expect? Just to follow me into a Trick Room, perhaps? Here's the thing, I don't actually want to KO Indeedee right now, I think, because I don't want to give my opponent a free switch in into the Comfey. So, for that reason, I'm actually just going to go for an Astral Barrage here, and a Thunderbolt. Them having Psychic Terrain is the main problem for us right now, because if I could change the terrain, then I can Eerie Impulse and Thunder Wave away. That would be pretty good, but I can't. Now, Astral Barrage is going to do a decent amount here into Palkia. Very good, actually. Just under 50%, wow. So I'll take it. I will gladly take that. So we get a T-Bolt off into Indeedee. Get some Paralysis. Trick Room should be going up here, right? Yep. This next turn is where things get interesting. Now, if you're my opponent, you can just go Expanding Force, Spatial Rend, or Hydro Pump into either Pokemon. You should Spatial Rend here, I would think, because you really don't want to risk a Gastrodon switch in. Indeedee could have Helping Hand as well, so you could go for Helping Hand, Spatial Rend, or even Max Wormwind onto Thundurus. I don't mind a Protect on Calyrex this turn, I think. And just a Thunderbolt into the Palkia slot. They could also even just switch Indeedee out into Comfey immediately, but okay, they're going to commit the Dynamax here. I'm generally okay with that. Let's see who they target. Getting them to commit the Dynamax first before we move, I think, is a good sign, because right now I'm like, I've already chipped away at their max bomb, but the key thing to worry about here is that they do have recovery thanks to the Comfy, right? So that can be really scary. Either way, though, I think my opponent found the perfect lead here because I don't think I have a good answer against Indeedee Palkia. There's just no easy solution here. That is cool. Indeedee has a way to self-activate weakness policy. Wow. Okay, Draining Kiss Indeedee. That's awesome. A max Wormwind here. That's actually really frustrating because I could have just gone Thunderbolt and Astral Barrage there and just gotten the knockout onto Palkia because I thought they were just gonna go for Expanding Force for sure to cover for Focus Sash Calyrex. So that does not happen. I mean, they're just gonna go for another Wormwind, right? Do I even conserve Calyrex here? How fast is their Palkia? Because one play I'm thinking about is Self Thunder Wave. No, we're still 111 speed. I don't think that works out for us. Honestly, normally I wouldn't go for a double protect, but this is like one of those rare scenarios where I think it actually makes some sense because I don't really have anything better to go for anyway. Yeah, I mean, I don't think my opponent's going to be really threatened by Thundurus here, right? Okay, that's probably Comfy coming in. Yep, so you can heal back next turn, which is obviously scary. Actually get the double off. Okay, that's neat. I think they have to target Calyrex here. It's just way too risky not to. That is a hard read. Wow. That was a really interesting turn because I think that was a really high risk play by my opponent where if I just went for Psyshock there, I just would have won immediately. In my eyes, I thought just my opponent had to target Calyrex like 100% of the time, but obviously they didn't. So that's really interesting. Wow, okay. Maybe they were just like, well, you're not going to get the knockout anyway, or there's no way you attack with Calyrex because you know you're going to get knocked out, but not how I expected that turn to play out. Okay, only 2 turns of Trick Room left. The other question I have is how fast this is Palkia. You can obviously heal up right now. Man, I'm shocked by that last turn. That, like, I get punished for actually going for the double protect, so props to my opponent. I mean, if they heal up the Palkia, I don't think a Max Quake is KOing, and I think they're going to Wormwind into Calyrex. Swords Dance is really greedy here, I think. Is it greedy, actually? Because if you target the Groudon... the thing is, I don't think Psyshock KOs the Palkia, and they are slower than us, wow. Yeah, they target Calyrex this time. Okay, so the Swords Dance maybe was a little bit greedy, but I think it actually pays off pretty well for us here. Because here's the thing now. We're set up for the end game. I guess the only thing that's awkward is this next turn. Yeah, that Palkia is probably just min speed. Oh man, if I just attempted a Psyshock earlier, I think my opponent probably also thought they could just survive an Astral Barrage, since they didn't really respect like the option of me going for a Psychic type attack in that position. So really interesting stuff. Now they can heal Palkia back up to full, which is obviously frustrating. How am I Dynamaxing this endgame? You know there's Indeedee in the back. Okay, here I think I'm just down to double protect, honestly. Groudon's at +1 right now, so Palkia will be at full HP essentially. Maybe I could have gotten away with attacking with Groudon this turn, or even Dynamaxing the Groudon. But the thing is, I think I really want to max Charizard because I get so much value out of G-Max Wildfire in this endgame now. These games have not played out how I've expected them to in the slightest. Okay, instead of healing, they go for Ally Switch. Okay, and Hydro into the Charizard slot. I can respect that. So now I have to deal with the possibility of Ally Switch as well. Oof. I think the game essentially actually boils down to this turn. Oh, actually, I think I'm always fine if I just go... Oh no, not necessary, because they can just heal up Palkia. So the question is, do they attempt an ally switch here? Oh, I guess the other question is whether or not Hydro one-shots, and they could also miss a Hydro Pump, so... Because the thing is, I want to Wildfire into the Comfey. And then just Precipice Blades. Okay. So if you ally switch, I win. I should actually just win off that, because I would end up KOing the Palkia. We would get Wildfire up, and then there's just far too much offense in this end game for my opponent to deal with. Floral Healing is what's scary, right? Because I think my opponent has 3 plays. Ally Switch, and attack with Palkia, protect with Palkia and try to Trick Room, or Floral Healing and just attack with Palkia. Okay, they opt for the Floral Healing option, so that's probably the best one that they could have opted for there. I just really didn't want to max Airstream into... Yeah, I really didn't want to max Airstream into that position and have them protect as Comfey sets up a Trick Room. So we get the knockout there. Like, the thing is, in my eyes, my play covered for 2 of their 3 best plays. And even in this worst case scenario, like if they Hydro Charizard, I think Charizard can survive. They also have to hit the Hydro Pump, and they, it's 20% chance to potentially miss. Ooh, actually almost one-shot them. They do Hydro into Charizard. Ooh, that's enough for a KO. Okay. But the thing is, I don't know if a Behemoth Blade from... It comes down to, like, the Zacian. Or I guess the other question is, did you even bring Zacian? Because there is a chance they just straight up didn't bring that. So if I had gone for Airstream into Palkia on Precipice Blades, if we hit the Precipice Blades, then, we just win the game outright. But since they had revealed the Ally Switch option, and I think it's likely they have Trick Room, I didn't feel 100% comfortable there. Plus, I was thinking maybe there was a chance we could survive there. Oh, and their last one's Rillaboom. Okay, well done. So that should allow them to win the game. This one's so interesting because I was like, oh, I might as well just go for this Double Protect because I don't have a reason not to. But if I actually had gone for that Psyshock, I think we would have been able to actually just outright knock out Palkia. So this one's interesting, right? Because you can see... Oh, I guess it's interesting, though, because of the way the terrain interaction works. So Groudon actually could still pull this off. 2 turns of Sunlight... Okay, I think I'm going to go for a Protect here just to scout out for what they want to go for. Sun doesn't really matter right now. I've got the Citrus Berry. The other question is whether or not NDD has Helping Hand in this position. But, yeah. Last turn, right, if I had gone for Airstream and Precipice Blades, I mean, does Comfey have Trick Room in that position? Ally Switch? They have Helping Hand here as well. Okay, that's also going to be a problem. The question is, do you have Wood Hammer? I would think so. Wood Hammer feels pretty common on Rillabooms these days. Yeah, they do. But because we have Gmax Wildfire, actually, I mean, then the question is, can I survive a Helping Hand Wood Hammer? I wouldn't count on it, honestly. I've still got 2 turns of Wildfire left as well. I'd be surprised if Groudon were faster here, but I could always angle for a Rock Slide flinch as well. I think because I don't know how fast the Rillaboom is, it's worth actually looking for a flinch here. Interesting, they go for Follow Me, okay. So that means I'm definitely going to survive this turn at least. And I am faster, that's absolutely huge. Okay, wow. I don't get a KO there, they're going to go for Wood Hammer, but I think that's fine because I just... Yeah, oh my gosh, wow, that was so close. Because now I just, I heal back from Citrus, I Protect. So the reason they went for Follow Me there is because they're probably trying to, cover from a Fire-type attack, right? If I have a Fire-type attack there, like Fire Punch or Heat Crash, and I target Rillaboom, you obviously just instantly lose the game. But since we are faster here, actually, even if we weren't faster, we would have been fine. But this was interesting because I feel like both of us had opportunities to just win the game. I missed out on a bunch of opportunities. But it's the last turn of Wildfire here, so I can always just Protect. Yeah, there's... I guess there's the chance NDD is like Heal, Follow Me. Heal Pulse? It's just such a... unexpected attack that I don't know, okay, they end up actually forfeiting, so I don't think they have it. So the question there is, like, do I get nervous about a move that NDD almost never carries? to, because it's like, okay, well, if I, just hit the Rock Slide there, 81% chance to immediately win the game, but I didn't, you never want to risk the game on a potential miss there. So these matches have been really, really intense so far. This one was interesting because, yeah, like, I think most players would have gone for Wormwind into Calyrex there. So in my head, I was like, I can just stall out another turn if they're Dynamax and it'll be fine. But I actually missed out on an opportunity to go for the Psyshock. And then, yeah, the other tricky thing was, like, out of the 3 possible plays when it was, like, Charizard versus the Palkia, like, if they go for the Ally Switch or the Trick Room, in both of those options, we just win the game immediately, if I hit the Precipice Blades, of course. Precipice Blades also almost KO the Palkia as well, so that's something else I was thinking about, like single target, whether it would have been enough to get the knockout, but obviously it wasn't. But yeah, that endgame was looking really scary, but because of the terrain interaction, it actually worked out in our favor. Plus Groudon being faster and us actually surviving that Wood Hammer, and them, of course, going for the Follow Me to cover for me having a Fire-type attack, but me not actually having one. So it's been a banger start to Series 12 so far, so let's look for one more. Game 3 of the day, and it is Seismitoad Zacian. So as I expressed in, when I did the team breakdown, part of why I wanted to use this team is because there's just so many Zacian teams, and I realistically think like over 50% of teams you're going to play in Series 12 are going to have Zacian. Now, Zacian was on a lot of teams in the previous formats as well, but in the previous formats, you could only have one restricted Pokemon, and obviously it's fun to try out a lot of the other ones, but in Series 12 where you have 2, Zacian is just like so strong, it's hard to give up, using one slot for it. So it's a Seismitoad team, very similar actually to the Seismitoad teams we featured in Series 11. I actually wonder if it's physical Seismitoad then. Oh, that would be really interesting. It's also, we obviously have a Weather War here, right? And that's pretty scary. I think I like Thundurus a lot thanks to Eerie Impulse. Grimmsnarl scares me a lot. I mean, I feel like if there's ever a time to bring Gastronauts here, but the thing is that, Seismitoad could have Power Whip, which turns into Max Overgrowth, and just them having a Grass-type attack really scares me. As odd as it seems, I'm actually thinking about Thundurus Charizard with Groudon and Calyrex in the back. The main reason I like Charizard here is because I think it's so strong offensively, and if we have Weather Control, it outspeeds my opponent's team outside of the Zacian. So, I know, like, I guess for me personally, I still don't 100% feel comfortable bringing Gastron, because, like, a lot of these matchups are okay for it. I think, if my opponent didn't have Seismitoad, they didn't have Ferrothorn, then Gastron 100% comes out. But the combination of both of those Pokemon team previews scares me off a little bit, although I guess I don't think my opponent ever brings Ferrothorn here, truthfully, now that I think about it. They're going to go with Grim and Zacian. So my main question here is whether or not Grimmsnarl is carrying Fake Out. I think it's really strong as an option in best of 1. But generally, I think this is actually really good for us. Don't mind going for a Thunder Wave here. I'm nervous about speed control from my opponent's Grim, like T-Wave or Scary Face and a Charizard. I mean, the only scenario in which you stay in with Zacian is if you have Sub, you protect to bypass the turn of my attacks, or you just Fake Out Play Rough Thundurus, but I don't think that's a trade that's actually... Oh, it's actually not a terrible trade, I guess. Okay, the reason why I'm actually going for Wildfire here is because... Okay, they switch out Zacian. I could see Kyogre coming in, but... Or Seismitoad, I think it's one of the two. Cool, they bring in Kyogre, that's fine. Now, the reason why I'm okay with this is because I've got the Thunder Wave and the Eerie Impulse on Thundurus, so even if you have, like, T-Wave on your Seismitoad, it's honestly okay. Getting Wildfire up this early on I think is valuable, since my opponent's team doesn't really have, like, really good recovery either. And I don't know if I love the idea of Dynamaxing Groudon or Calyrex in this matchup. I think Calyrex is better as a non-max option, and I think Groudon is just a little bit scary thanks to the weather interactions. So, I'm okay with this outcome. I think the lead actually worked out quite nicely for us, and paralyzing a restricted is always decent, right? Yeah, they just go for Light Screen, that's fine. The reason I'm okay with Light Screen is because obviously that doesn't bypass the amount of damage I do through my residual damage, right? So, it's really not that scary. Like, I'm obviously not doing too much with Charizard at the moment, but that's also okay with me. This next turn is where things get interesting. Because I could just pivot out the Thundurus immediately out into Groudon. And actually just go for max Overgrowth onto Kyogre. I think I like the idea of pushing the tempo right now, because if I can just knock out their Kyogre, it gives me full weather control. Then the only way you have to really change the weather would be Kyogre going for, or sorry, Seismitoad going for max Geyser. What I'm a little bit nervous about here is potentially Dynamax Kyogre and their Assault Vested, but I just think given the early paralysis and the wildfire damage, it doesn't make much sense to max Kyogre, but they're going to go for it. Okay. So then my question here is, are you Assault Vested? How much bulk do you have? Because this is actually not a bad trade-off for us, right? If I end up, even if I don't KO it, right, doing like over 50%, Geyser's not going to pick up a knockout onto either Pokemon here. But yeah, it was... Like, that maxing isn't even that bad here, right? I would probably consider it the worst case scenario, and I think it's actually still fine. Thunder Wave is where things get scary, though, because they could get a full para on my Charizard. But we don't get full para this turn. That alone, honestly, already is really good for us, in my opinion. Huge max Overgrowth. And they are definitely Assault Vested. Oh my goodness. I took that with less than, yeah, 30%. Wow. That is impressive. Okay, so we take some Life Orb. They're also going to manage to attack through, so now it's Geyser. Now it's awkward because they have managed to control the weather. Doesn't KO Charizard, though, so that's good. Wow. Man, I knew Assault Vest Kyogre could be tanky, but I didn't think it'd be that tanky. That's impressive. That's very impressive. The alternative was staying in, right, and just going for an Eerie Impulse. This is where things get a little bit weird. Like, I really want to knock out the Grimmsnarl, right? And I also want to change the weather. Max Airstream here should KO Grimm after Wildfire, I would think. If I were my opponent, I would actually probably just Geyser into the Groudon slot. I don't have a safe switch into that. Groudon feels so essential for this endgame for me, though, right? I could sacrifice Thundurus. That's a possibility. That would conserve Focus Sash on Calyrex. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to switch into Thundurus here. And then go for Airstream here onto the Grimm. Yeah, AV Kyogre is, I think, it turned out to be, you know, really one of the best sets towards the end of Series 11. I was really impressed by it. And so, finally, players realizing, hey, you don't have to actually invest speed really into Kyogre at all, you know? You just go for bulk. So they'll get Reflect up here. Okay, rough full para, and they don't get full para'd either, so that's really tough. Okay, they target the Charizard slot though. The thing is, I can obviously bring Groudon back out. I can Eerie Impulse into the Kyogre, but the thing is that they are going to be able to get one more Max Geyser off, and I think that's the main problem for me right now. With both of our Pokemon being paralyzed, you know, obviously, like, full paras bound to happen. Just a little unfortunate that Charizard was the one that bit the bullet there. Because if we get the knockout there, it forces my opponent to bring in his Zacian or their final Pokemon, right? And then Thundurus can get good speed control. For example, in Zacian with T-Wave. Yeah, that's a really tough turn. Because I feel like I have to play assuming that their last one is going to be... Like, I think I just bring out Groudon here, because you can't Thunder Wave either of these Pokemon. So I can just go for Eerie Impulse on a Kyogre and a Precipice Blades. I can also consider Swords Dancing with Groudon as well. Ooh, Swords Dance is actually somewhat compelling here. And my question is, what is their final Pokemon right now? Because they haven't really revealed a good Seismitoad answer yet, but... Fine with the Eerie Impulse here. I think Swords Dance is actually worth it. Because if I Precipice Blades, it just gives them a free switch in right now. I don't want to give them a free switching. Because we know Kyogre's Assault Vested. So what this means is this next turn I'll have a +2 Groudon with Precipice Blades. And they don't really have great switch-ins, right? The remaining Pokemon, Ferrothorn, Seismitoad, Zacian, well, none of those really want to take a Precipice Blades. And that Zapdos would be the final option, but I just don't think they really bring that in this matchup. Okay, so now it's a -2 Kyogre. You don't have a Water-type boosting attack either. Or item, I should say. Just gonna opt for Spirit Break. Yeah, probably a double up on a Groudon, but I think we should survive a -2 Geyser here. And if they get full parried, it would be sweet revenge. And they do. Okay, that's really lucky, but I actually think them getting paralyzed here is a lot worse for them than me getting paralyzed the previous turn. Because Groudon just goes completely unpunished, and now my opponent's in a really awkward position. So, yeah, that's definitely lucky. Now the question I have is, does my opponent have that Seismitoad? Because if you do, well, here's the thing, right? This is exactly why I wanted a Swords Dance, because now my opponent's left with 2 Pokemon that can't protect. So it's like, do you just give up both Pokemon? You can't angle to actually reset the weather and get Seismitoad in cleanly right now, which is what makes this really awkward for them. So double checking the board state, 4 turns of Sun left. They still have a lot of turns of Reflect and Light Screen, but that's okay. I'm definitely clicking Precipice Blades with Groudon. The question is with the Thundurus, do I want to make a prediction and read into a switch in? I mean, Precipice Blades will essentially KO everything at this point. I think we just go for... Oh, you know what? I actually don't mind going for Taunt here. Because I don't think we really need an immediate Thunder Wave or an Eerie Impulse. I think they probably just sack both Pokemon. Yeah, it looks like it. But Taunt would cover for like a Zacian switch into me missing Precipice Blades. Looks like I am going to miss here, though. Actually don't remember whose name that was. Ooh, that was the Kyogre. Uh-oh. That's okay, though. They're -2 in the Sun. And they just go for Origin Pulse. That's fine. The only scary thing is now, because of that, like, Groudon is in a weird HP range where maybe Zacian can actually just KO me with the Behemoth Blade. But you could actually argue that this also slightly works in my favor, because this Kyogre is just completely useless for my opponent right now. My opponent was expecting probably to lose both of their Pokemon and get a bunch of free switch-ins, but that's no longer going to be the case. So they're going to bring out Zacian. No surprise there. So this turn is pretty clear-cut, I think. Just Thunder Wave into Zacian. With T-Wave, we should outspeed. It's T-Wave into Precipice Blades. And I don't want to go for a Rock Slide. I don't want to go for a Swords Dance because you have no switch-ins right now. Okay, so they switch Kyogre out. That's okay. I mean, whatever's coming is taking a +2 Precipice Blades, right? It's Ferrothorn. Okay, cool. That works very well for us, in my opinion. Yeah, and they just protect with Zacian, but I'm fine with that. Now, my only question is, what is your Ferrothorn set? Are you Iron Defense, Body Press, Leech Seed, Protect? That's the typical set. I could also look at it. I missed another Precipice Blades. Okay, that's actually really rough. That could be a problem. That definitely could be a problem. I mean, I've still got full HP Calyrex in the back, though, so it's okay, in my opinion. I've revealed Taunt already. I don't think Behemoth Blade gets the knockout on a Groudon here. If I were my opponent, what would I do? I'd actually switch the Zacian out, in my opinion. So I'm going to go for Taunt here onto Ferrothorn and then Precipice Blades. I guess they could also hope for me to miss Thunder Wave or Crit. Yeah, they switched. Okay, perfect. The thing, though, is that I'm nervous about Ferrothorn having Power Whip here, and that's why us missing that Precipice Blades this previous turn was pretty rough, although I don't even know if I have Power Whip KOs, to be honest. So let's see. Get Taunt successfully off. That's good. Okay, Precipice Blades double connects this time. Should get the knockout on a Kyogre there. Nice, does over 50 to Ferrothorn, so that's incredible. They do have Power Whip. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because otherwise your Gastron matchup is really lackluster, but Groudon survives. Beautiful. Okay. That should... Oh, actually, I wouldn't say it ensures the victory for us yet, but it should put us in a very, very nice spot. They are leftovers. Okay, so I can potentially get the KO with another Precipice Blades, but it's kind of close. We know Ferrothorn's taunted, though. So he can't protect, it can't go for Iron Defense or anything like that. I think my opponent's mainly hoping for a Precipice Blades miss right now, but I've already missed twice, so the odds of that aren't exactly terrible. So I want to go for T-Wave here onto Zacian. I could also lose off a T-Wave miss, actually, so I still have to hit some relatively inaccurate attacks, which is scary. How many turns of screens are left for them? Last turn of Light Screen, which bodes well for our special damage in the back. Yeah, I'm just going to go for the safe T-Wave Protect here. With the odds of us connecting on Thunder Wave into a Precipice Blades, yeah, they just go for Protect. So Another thing I could have done here was just like say, okay, well they have to protect here. I might as well Precipice Blades, but I didn't want them to like for me to get a low damage roll on Precipice Blades, straight up not KO the Ferrothorn and have them Power Whip to knock me out, right? Because like right now I know Ferrothorn's essentially useless against Thundurus, so this turn, even though it feels relatively meaningless, like well now I can just go for T-Wave into Precipice Blades. The other interesting consideration for my opponent's end is you could also go for the double protect with the Zacian. So we'll see. I think double protect here is a pretty strong play, but you could also play towards and hope for me missing. They go for the double and they get it. But I think it's actually still okay because as long as we hit Precipice Blades on Ferrothorn, Astral Barrage should finish off Ferrothorn, then we can just finish off the game with Astral Barrage. But if I miss Precipice Blades here, it's a disaster. Okay, we hit that. Cool. Yeah, I think we're still fine. My opponent needed a lot of luck in order to win this endgame, I think. Or actually, not a lot. I think it was definitely a reasonable amount. But this is where Taunt on Thundurus was so good, right? Because like the Ferrothorn not being able to protect means now I can just bring in Calyrex, and so Taunt wears off, but it's okay. At this point, with us actually having stalled out Light Screen, I think we're in a great spot. So here's Calyrex, and now I am just gonna go for. I think we just go for T-Wave on Azashi, and I don't really see a reason to go for anything else. Mainly because I have Focus Sash on this, right? So if I didn't have Sash, like, yeah, then I'd maybe go for Will-O-Wisp and then just Thunderbolt. Ferrothorn here should protect, in my opinion. You don't want to give me a free special attack boost, but even with that, it's fine. My main question is the Zacian's final couple of attacks. They're actually not going to protect Ferrothorn, so I think that just ensures us the victory. So, I mean, this is a great example of a game where you just have to, like, not get too flustered even if things don't go your way, right? We ended up getting fully paralyzed with Charizard, missing 2 Precipice Blades, but they also, of course, got fully paralyzed on Kyogre that final turn. It's part of the reason I was surprised to see them Dynamax it immediately, because they'd already taken a little bit of damage on it, and, of course, you know, Dynamaxing a Pokemon when it's already paralyzed doesn't feel great. But it makes a lot of sense in the context of this matchup because my opponent just straight up didn't have any other option to Dynamax, right? You're not going to max Zacian. Ferrothorn, not exactly a very good Dynamax option here either. Although since it's Power Whip, you could actually consider it. And Grimmsnarl, you're not going to Dynamax either. So the Dynamax makes more sense because they didn't have Seismitoad or Zapdos in the back. I think if you do have either in the back, then you angle towards maxing either of those potentially. But since they didn't, my opponent was just like, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. But we are going to clean up the game here. There's Astral Barrage coming out, and that should get the knockout onto Zacian and finish things off for us. So, yeah, these games actually are going on for a lot longer than I expected and a lot more methodical and drawn out, which I'm actually pleasantly surprised by. So, all the matches were really fun today, and yeah, once again, like I chose this team because I think it gives you an edge against all the Zacian teams that are running around, and we went up against a lot of different ones, right? Palkia, Kyogre in this one, and so, yeah, you should expect to see Zacian in a lot of team comps. But I think this team matches up well against a lot of things that you are going to run into. So all the matches today were pretty interesting because I feel like there were a lot of unexpected plays, and maybe that's just how Series 12 kind of is. But the Dynamax Thundurus, me Dynamax the Incineroar, the Palkia, you know, in Game 2 not targeting my Calyrex. So yeah. Either way, though, that is a really, really fun way to get this format started. So I really hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. If you did enjoy, please share your support by leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to answer the question of the day. Let me know what you're trying out in Series 12. And leave a like if you enjoy, and I'll see you all soon. All right. Peace.